Is my slide visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yes,
And I hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. So when my friend pharmacist Beatrice asked that we should make this presentation, so him and I were discussing on what the topic would be. And the idea was to make a presentation to early career pharmacists on how to have a life, a career in research, not just because you want to be a researcher, but because you want to contribute to the body of knowledge of science. So I say that we should think of something that is just basic, something that most people meet, most people pass through, but they never took time to understand that they were involved in a critical aspect of research, and that is setting the pace, setting the stage for the research. For every research that you have, it ends up with a conclusion from which you can also talk about the policy implication and implication for practice as the case may be. But all this starts from something, and that is asking the right research question. So in the next few minutes, we'll be discussing what it takes to ask the right question. We'll give practical examples of questions that have been asked in research and that have been answered through published peer review articles. We'll also show one another how to uh, set some questions ourselves. What makes a good research question? What makes one that is not too good? What are the basic flaws that one can have in setting up a research question? We'll go on to also give some frameworks that one can use to ask research questions, and it will be easy for you to answer it while on the field. So I want to start by saying that the research question is the fulcrum. The research question is the backbone of every single research that you've ever seen. It is the research question that determines what we'll use in setting up our design. If we want our study to be, for instance, a cross-sectional study, and we're going to mention some of them today, or you want it to be a prospective or retrospective study, you want your work to be a study that has to do with different arms as we have in randomized controlled trials, randomized or not randomized. All this, the design that you talk about, is based on the question. So you can see in this our slide where we have the workflow from question to conclusion, you will see that the question determines design, while design will go up to tell us what sample size we'll use, sample in terms of the size, sample in terms of the people, sample in terms of the setting. This sample also goes on to tell us what we are going to measure, what are the variables that we're going to measure when we go to the field, whether physical field or when we go and check databases or whatever we use, or by observations. And it is that that will not tell us how we are going to analyze our data. If our study asks a question that has to do with relationship, we will not understand that our analysis must tell us something about comparison. If our question talks about an observation, we expect that our analysis will give us some measures of central tendencies, measures of dispersion. Then at the end, we'll be able to make a conclusion. What this means is that you start from the question, and it is the most important thing that you need to do. If you lose out in your question, if you don't get the question correct, all these others will all go wrong. And there's no amount of faking it using knowledge of statistics, knowledge of the use of AI that can help you to answer a question that did not exist in the first place. If you do not frame your research question well, I bet you that you can go to the field, and when you come back, you will see that you've wasted all your resources of time, of money in getting data, variables that will not be able to give you the question that you are trying to answer. If you do not get the right question or at the word go, you will see that whenever you have findings, whenever you have results, Your results do not address anything, and nobody is interested in listening to what you are saying because you do not ask the right question. If you don't have the right question, you also risk the possibility of having bias such that there are many co-founders that you do not know that could affect your work because your research question was wrong. And finally, if you have a research question that is wrong, then I bet you that nobody looks at your work twice before rejecting it and telling you that you did not do the right thing. Nobody will take time to publish a work that does not have a good research question. That is why you see that at the end, you are not able to publish your work in good journals, except those predatory journals, all those volume 1, volume 2 journals that you see locally and in some places that they try to fix individuals. So don't think that it is statistic, it is p-value that determines whether your work is good or it is not good. It is not to say that your work is statistically significant or not significant. No, it is about the research question. So what are we going to do this evening? This evening, we're going to start with knowing how to frame this research question, how to make a research question to be the one that can find a gap in the body of knowledge and have a very wide idea that we have, how we can bring it down into a straightforward, smart research question. Then, when we have this question in mind, we also think of how to sharpen the question. What are the frameworks that exist? There are 1,001 frameworks that exist that one can use to sharpen your broad idea that you have in any research question. But we are going to see how we are able to use common examples to come up with a very good research question. And at the end, we'll see if we can convert this our question into an objective from an aim, from which we can now conduct a study. That one will say that it can withstand any scrutiny, it can withstand any eagle eye peer review. So what do we want to do from here? Every research question that a person has that you want to answer, note that that question should have a source. You don't just wake up and say that this is a research question. It should come from somewhere, and it should be able to fill a gap in science. So if you can't state the gap that you are filling in one sentence as a rule of thumb, then that your question is not ready yet to be used to go to the field. If you do not have one very good sentence that ends with a question mark that can tell us that this is my research question, this is what I want to assess, then you do not have research question that can take you to the field. So where can we get research questions from, and how can they be used to fill the gap in knowledge? We are pharmacists, and the topic is about healthcare practitioners. So I'll be giving some examples that fit into our settings and how they can be used. So let's take the first example. You can get your research question from your clinical practice. There are some problems that you see during practice in your community pharmacy, in your hospital pharmacy, your practice as a clinical pharmacist, as anyone that is involved in healthcare delivery. There are things that you see day to day by the bedside of the patient, in the ward, in the dispensary, in the stores, that can elicit research question. If you see two different patients taking the same drug and they are having different health outcomes, the question can come from it. Why do different patients on the same drug come up with different outcomes? If you are a clinician and you give out drugs to people take drugs that you dispense, and it happens that people buy one drug more in larger quantity than the other of the same constituent, then you ask a question: what determines people's choices of one drug over the other of the same class, for instance? As a clinician, you can be in practice and also come up with a research question because something did not go as expected. You have individuals who are taking NSAIDs for a given pain, and you observe that people take several doses of one before they have the desired effect compared to the other. That is an observation that can come from clinical practice. And as a clinician, you can say that I want to find out why the difference. For us in healthcare practice, this is the best place to get novel research questions from, to get questions that have not been answered before, to get questions that are new, to get questions that people will want to know what is going on and what is this author saying. Clinical practice, because it is you are the primary observer, you are the person that brings it up in the first place, that this is what I have observed. So clinical practice is one place that you can get your research questions from. Another common place that we get research questions from is from literature, and this means that as healthcare professionals, we need to be reading. I have to tell some colleagues, especially those in the hospital, that if you have opportunity of being in multidisciplinary world round, you hear individuals talking about published in this journal. I saw it in New England Journal of Medicine. I saw it in the Lancet last week. It was published 2 weeks ago. It was published last month. This is how to now do this research. These are things that they get from reading. Therefore, we must be reading. And when we say reading, we don't mean going to read what you see on just Wikipedia, for instance, or what you see in normal blogs that people come up and write whatever they want to write. No, that is not a place that you can come up and say that I have gotten research questions that could be used in a good research. We mean literature, published works, works that have undergone peer review one way or the other, works that somebody sat down, conducted a research, has a finding. And one good thing about such research is that if you go through them, you will see that in your reading of the method, if you compare the objective with the method, with the findings, you may be able to see some contradictions and even some self-acknowledged limitations. Whenever you go to the section of limitation, that's a place that you can get up very good research question, because people say that we could have done this, but we did not do this. Or our findings could be limited by A, by B, by C. You can go to that place and bring up your own research question. Another place that you can get it from is that there are some people, some authors are generous enough to have a heading that they call further research. They tell you places that they have not covered, that they will advise people coming after them to go on and read about those areas and bring up questions and research about those areas. So always check for such things. One other place that's available to us is from our patients, our community. What do people that we interact with, what do they prioritize? Don't make human beings to just be data points where we collect data from. Listen to them, hear their opinions, and see what is most important to them. How do they prioritize items? How do they talk about one problem in the society that's a healthcare concern? You are in a community and people's concern is about the weather, for instance, how it is changing their breathing behavior, how it's making them to have URTI one way or the other. You are a pharmacist or a clinician, so you start thinking, what is the opinion of my community about this issue? You hear that there's Ebola again coming up in one place or the other, and you are aware of your community that people do not care how they get their meat. They get meat from the market, they get meat from those coming from the bushes and the hunters without any precaution. You are the healthcare provider. How does it affect your healthcare that you can now set up a question? You can also not even going to any literature that is that peer reviewed. Just go to existing registries, go to existing databases. If you work in the hospital, the pharmacy section has a place where they keep their prescriptions. If you work in a regulatory agency like NAFDAC, like PCN, these are repositories of data. Large data sets are there. We have our DHS, we have several sources in Nigeria. In NAFDAC, we have a lot of information. In NIPRID, in NIMA, they have a lot of information that are just stored somewhere, begging for people to come and take them and research. We have in our hospitals diagnosis issues. We have issues of even payment and supply system, how we hear about out of stock all the time. The research question. It therefore means that by the time you use any of these sources, clinical practice, your literature, your patients and the community, as well as existing databases, you can now say that my research question is covering a specific gap. Is it a gap in evidence, for instance, where you see that there are findings that exist, but those findings are conflicting, or those findings are inconclusive from either your clinical practice or from the literature. You are able to now cover an evidence gap. What about population gap? Let's say you read in the literature that they have studied this matter among pregnant women, but nobody has studied them among people who are unable to give birth. Or they've studied this matter among men who are single, but you want to know what if it can affect those that are married. You see a study that talks about behavioral changes that occur as people move from 100 level university to their final year. This is about students. What about those that are in the communities, those that are in the farms, those that are in the markets? Will this same thing affect them? That's the population gap. What about methodological gap? Somebody conducts a study and uses a quantitative method to answer his research question, and so he's now giving people, in most cases, close-ended questions. Can't you open it up and do qualitative works about them, ask them their opinions, either as focus group discussions or as key informant interviews? Anyway, that now opens up and closes the gap, the weaknesses that the people before you have not touched. Finally, you can also fill your own gap as knowledge gap itself. People have been assuming one opinion or the other, and nobody has ever come up with a fact checking method. You, as a researcher, can come up and say, okay, let me come up with a question that now tests this assumption of my community. If people believe, for instance, that Ebola will come mainly from people that take animals that are killed from the bush, this is an assumption. Has it been tested? Have you gone to the lab to take some things from them and seen that this is how it occurs? What makes somebody to believe this statement as a myth or a fact? This is something that you can do whenever you set up a good research question that will now close the research gap. So let's take an example of how this idea have been used to get a work published. Let's assume, and sorry, I always like to use examples that relate to me, that I have passed through and also done something that comes out positive at the end, or even if it is negative, but something that at least I'm accustomed to. So imagine an instance that currently, I think I've been hearing the last few months that there's an upsurge in the incidence of HIV among young women in Nigeria. In fact, there's a data that I saw this morning about the rate that's moving in Lagos, for instance, and these are from people that have even come to test. What about those that are untested? We don't know their status. So you see that this is a broad idea. So one day, with a friend, we're discussing about HIV prevention among young women. What do they use to prevent themselves from having HIV? We have women who are exposed to HIV because they go to the salon and they share whatever they use to make their hairs, what they use to do their pedicure and manicure. We have women who are also predisposed by nature of who they are, young women in the universities. Some of them are exposed to different behavior that one can only imagine. So we talked about how can we do a study about these young women and HIV prevention. That is the topic. That is wide. So now say, okay, let's now focus. Let's go to literature and see what has been used in HIV prevention globally that has not come to Nigeria. If it comes to Nigeria, will people want to use it? So we went to read and saw that year, the dapivirine was just introduced into the practice, and it's being used as a 28-day cycle a device that women use and prevents them from having HIV as a form of pre-exposure prophylaxis. This is also a very good topic. This is a focus that somebody can think of many things from it. But so what? It prevents HIV. It does not come to Nigeria. So what? So what about the women? So what about the students in the university? We say, okay, let's bring it closer. Let's talk about how, since it's not yet in Nigeria, if it comes to Nigeria, what can drive the acceptability? What can drive its usage? What can drive its global perception by citizens. Education came to our mind. If you tell people about it before it comes to the market, you will be able to control the narrative about it. If you have an idea about what people might suspect about this device, then go and change it before it happens. So we now came up with a question that says, among female undergraduates at the University of Nigeria, will a structured educational intervention improve their knowledge, acceptability, and willingness to pay for the depraved Virginia ring? This was now the final research question that we came with. Look at the key things. There is a population, female undergraduate. There is an intervention, educational intervention. There is an outcome of choice, knowledge, acceptability, and willingness to pay. There is an expected time-bound outcome at the end that we expect it to improve. We expect knowledge to improve. We expect accessibility to improve. We expect willingness to pay to also improve. At the end, we're able to come up with a study that was now published that talk about the impact of this our intervention on students' knowledge, accessibility, and willingness to pay for this program, for this intervention in Nigeria. Then other things were just what you use to make your work to stand out and be unique. Single arm, not randomized, first and Johnson University. These are just additions. But the most important thing have been passed: the population, the intervention, and the expected outcome. So you see that you don't start from the question to go to the topic. You don't start from your focus to go to the topic. You start from the topic first, the idea, the wide idea that you have. Then it gets down to the question. If you have your idea and you now focus at a point, don't stop there. That is not yet a question. It is only a question if you move through the ladder and come to the end where you now have a question that is testable. How do you see a question is testable? Let's now look at our frameworks and see the type of things that it can give us in testing our questions. The first thing that I want us to know this evening is that a research question should be able to pass the 5 tests that is known in what we call the FINA framework. The FINA framework is an old framework that is used in different cycles to talk about how people form research question. Whenever you have a research question, someone will ask you that, have you passed it through FINA, and which one does it tick? Which one is it not able to tick, and what can you do to improve it? So final F is feasible. Is this work feasible? Well, if you say feasibility, it has to do with you as a person. Do you have the expertise? Is the sample available? Are the people there? Do you have the resources, money, time to go and complete this study? Many times we come up with studies with ideas that are very beautiful, they are good, but you are not able to answer them because it was not feasible to you. You did not check that the subjects are not available. For instance, that first study I'll talk about students in the university. I am in the university and students are in the university, so I have access to them. What about the expertise? You need to have the expertise of what you are going to set up to know that you are going to use the right design, the right size, the right tool that you will use. And at the time is there. If you are doing a master's work, for instance, in a university that uses 9 months, in a university that uses 18 months for its field work, for its research, why will you go and do a study that requires you to go to 36 states in Nigeria? That's not feasible. So you must always be honest with yourself as you set up to design your research question. The next is that let this your research question be of interest to you, be of interest to the society, be of interest to policymakers, be of interest to stakeholders, be of interest to the field of interest that you want to talk about. Let this your topic have a genuine interest that people can say that, oh, we just heard that this has been published. Have you not heard that sometimes they would have closed acceptance of abstracts for conferences? They now call some late breaker abstract. Why? Because they believe that maybe before they closed abstract acceptance, some works came later, and those works are genuinely interesting to science, to the field, and so they will ask them to come and submit it. Then always ensure that your research questions are novel. Don't go back and repeat what people have done. Don't come up with an idea because maybe you want to just rush and finish up and have publications because you want to go out of Nigeria, because you know that if you are applying for grants, they will require these publications. You don't go and start bringing up research questions that will answer questions that already have been answered using better methods, using better expertise than your own. Yes, you are allowed to reconfirm existing knowledge. After, people say that whenever you say research, research can be divided into two words: re, and search. So it means we are researching what exists before. So that's okay, but it should be able to confirm, refute, or extend an existing idea. But also note, and very importantly, that you can also start with your own brand new research question that has not been answered anywhere before. So you are not standing on anybody's shoulder. You use their methods, but not necessarily the question itself. It should be ethical. If when you bring up a research question, how ethical is that research question? Whenever it's allowed to be passed through the ethical lens of your society, of the people that make up your IRB, your institutional review board, how would they say that this work is ethical? Who is going to benefit from your work? Who is going to take part in your work, and how will you protect them as they take part in that work? And finally, a research question should have the R component, which is that it should be relevant. Don't come up today and start studying syphilis. Don't come up in 2026 and start telling us that you want to talk about the mechanism of action of paracetamol. Paracetamol that people have gotten PhD in it. Don't come up today and start to talk about the use of a known drug for a known action. This is something that has been established. There are guidelines on them. So why will you come up and start asking suspicion? Nobody will want to listen to you. Always think of questions that if it is answered, it will be relevant to the practice. It is relevant to policymakers. They take them, they talk about it and use it in their findings. It's relevant to the body of science generally. It is relevant to the person that comes tomorrow and want to go up from where you have stopped. So if you're going to set up your research question, look at the frameworks that we are suggesting. Like I said, there are many of them, and we're just bringing up a few. There's what we know as the PICO guideline, the PICO framework that has P, I, C, and O. Sometimes you see that they put T, sometimes you see that they even add an S after the PICO. So let's just stop at the PICO, the PICO. What does it mean? That whenever you say that you have set up your research question, it should have a population, it should have a problem. Who is it studying? What is it studying? This is very important. You do not have a research question that has not specified who the population is or what the problem is all about. Always have this in mind, that your question is only good as much as it's able to identify a population, and it should mention the factor they are going to study. This factor must not necessarily be an intervention. It could be what you're going to observe, but let there be the idea as the eye. Then if you intend to compare it, observational or not even observational, there should be a comparator. There should be something that you are going to use as a test of your own finding. It could be an existing population, it could be an existing observation, it could be within your own group. You form a pre and post. That is already a comparison that you are conducting. Then there should be an outcome, what you are measuring. So if you remember what you said the other time about the other research question that we asked, the population was student, intervention was education, structured education intervention. Our comparison in that case was pre and post, before our intervention and after our intervention. That is already a comparison. Then you also talk about the outcome of measure. Our outcome, we mention them. We mention knowledge. We mention willingness to pay. We mention the acceptability. These are outcomes that somebody can measure in a population. So whenever you have your research question, try and test it for this framework and see if it will withstand it. We also have the spider framework that some people use. Some prefer to use it for qualitative study, but like I tell individuals, we can use any of these frameworks. We can use the PICO, we can use the spider either for quantitative or qualitative, it doesn't matter, provided you are able to specify and satisfy these conditions. If you see the sample now, will be like our P in the population. The phenomenon of interest can be our intervention. The design can be the method. Evaluation can be the measure. So in all, these are frameworks that you can always put that whenever you come up with a research question, please try and put it across any of these frameworks. Will it be answered by PICO, by SPIDER, by PICOT? If it is, then you have a good research question. But if it does not, your research question is poor and needs to be worked on. When you set up your research question, let it be able to fit into a given known area of research. It could be just an observational research. They are going to just see what is happening, what is the prevalence, what is the incidence, what is happening about this area, what is the pattern of change, what has been observed, what has been reported. This is descriptive. So you can have a research question, for instance, what is the quality of life of patients who have breast cancer? We have our population, the patient that have breast cancer. We have our intervention, our idea that we're measuring the quality of life. This is just observational. You could also compare. When you compare a practice in one area to the other, when you compare a population to the other, you compare a group to the other to determine a difference. Comparative, that's also a form of research that you can also develop. You can also be interested in looking for a relationship, an association between two or more groups, not just by looking, but you want to know what defines, what informs the change that occurs when you have one variable being compared to the other. And finally, you can also go ahead and do what we call a cause and effect assessment, where you intervene. You do something. I want to know whether there's going to be a change as a result of your intervention. If you look at these questions now that we have asked, the first one, what is the quality of life of patients with breast cancer? The second, does HIV post-exposure prophylaxis practice differ between two different hospitals in Nigeria? What is the relationship between adherence to antiretroviral treatment and quality of life of people living with HIV? Or the last one, how does an intervention by pharmacists improve health outcomes of patients who have hypertension in Nigeria? These are 4 different questions that fall into 4 different areas of research. And as you can see in this slide, we've used these questions to answer to complete studies. See the first one, observational alone. What was our interest? We have a population of people that have breast cancer. We want to know what is their quality of life. That's our interest. Although we went ahead to assess the quality of life using a generic and a disease-specific tool, but at the end, what did we do? Just observation. We just check and stop there. We will not go ahead to determine whether the quality of life is defined by this or defined by that. We did not do that. That was not our interest. See the next one. What did we do in that next one? Our interest was we have 2 hospitals in Nigeria. These 2 hospitals give people living with HIV post-exposure prophylaxis. We want to know what is the difference in the knowledge, attitude, and practice of pharmacists in those 2 hospitals. One in northern Nigeria, one in southern Nigeria, and we're able to come up with an answer. See the third one. We have people living with HIV. We have knowledge of their drug adherence. We have knowledge of their quality of life. We want to now know if quality of life is affected by the adherence. That was the research question and gave a publication. See the fourth one. What is our interest? We wanted to see if pharmacists in community practice will be able to improve the health outcomes of people that have hypertension in terms of their blood pressure control, the use of devices, and see if we can have 2 different study arms, our intervention arm and a control arm, to see if there will be any difference in the health outcomes at the end of our study. That was a research question and led to this. Now that you have your research question, what do you do with it? Do you just keep your question and it leads to your study? No. So beyond just having the question should be able to fit into a study plan that can have an aim. Once you're able to set up your good question, it should not give you an aim. That aim is what you are going to follow from beginning to the end. It is the aim from your research question that comes up finally to give you your design, give you your method, your findings. At any point in time, you always go back to your objective. You always go back to your aim to see if it's been answered. Aim and objectives are words that people use interchangeably, and of course, it can be used interchangeably. Some just prefer to use main objective and specific objective. Some use aim and objective. But in essence, whenever you now mention that word objectives, we want it to be a better form of the aim that is smart, that is specific, measurable, achievable, and relevant and time bound. So if you see these two questions, see the first one, to evaluate the impact of a structural education intervention on knowledge, suitability, and willingness to pay. That's the first part. But if you see this one now, it now mentions specifically before and after an intervention. Before and after an intervention. This now makes it to become smart. And at the end, we always like that people have a hypothesis where they mention what they are studying and starting with
Okay,
the
that's your
hypothesis. Just as an addition to what we've said, whenever you are going to ask your research question, always know that you can have your dependent and independent variable. You can have confounding variable. The one that you are going to use to cause an effect, to cause a change, the one that you are going to manipulate will be your independent variable. That is what you are studying. Then the one that is going to change, what is going to happen, will not become your dependent variable. And something else that you're not touching, that you're not observing, could affect your finding. These are called confounding variables. So if you see now in that our study that we gave example in, our independent variable was the exposure to an intervention before and after. What is the dependent variable? The acceptability, the willingness to pay, the knowledge about it becomes the dependent variable. But you see, that study was done among students. Therefore, the year of study, people in final year, for instance, in the graduating year, and those that just started pharmacy school in the second or third year, cannot be compared with those that spent some years in the university. So these are confounding factors. We do not intend to study them, but they can affect our study. Therefore, always be focus also on the variables that you're going to use in your research question that you're going to form. So this is just an add-on slide to just tell us that if you are able to ask a very good research question, I bet you that it will help you to determine your design that you're going to use on the field. If your question starts with saying something about how common, that is prevalence, then it will be a descriptive study, just a cross-sectional study. If your interest is about what happens over time, that's about having a cohort of people that are following over a given period of time. If your interest is what caused something to occur, that means you are interested in a cause and an effect. Therefore, a case control can be a good design that you're going to adopt. If your study is about giving a group of people a drug to see how it will come up in terms of the health outcomes, then you will advise to use a control trial, preferably the randomized control trial. Now, see the last one that we mentioned, the last two, let me just go to the last two. Experience. One aspect of research that people have been shying away from is the qualitative study. So we should be able to give ourselves good design, qualitative design, if we have a very good research question that talk about what people's experience, perceptions are about a given point. Then, if your own interest is to just go ahead and assess the already existing body of knowledge about an area, then a review, narrative review, rapid review, systematic review, meta-analysis will be a good design for you to take up. And that is about a good research question helping you. Also note that whenever you have a very good research question, this research question should have a certain level of validity and reliability. It should be able to help us to determine that there is no bias in this your research question, that this, if we use your research question to answer the same question in different population, in similar population, even in different settings, we should be able to come up with the same answer at the end. That is validity, that is reliability. And it is what tells people how credible your findings are. And someone can be able to say that I remain in an area and I can extrapolate your finding to that population, and also implement your suggestions, your recommendations based on your findings, because it is transferable, because it can be depended upon. And if we go ahead and do any form of confirmation, we'll be able to confirm that what you have is correct. Now, as you're going to the field, after you have your research question, always note some additional things that can also be affected by your research question. Something like the selection bias. If you do not ask the good research question, that means you don't have the good P in your PCOT or PICO, and so it gives you the wrong population. It gives you the wrong measure. Remember, our PICO has the measure, the outcomes. If you don't have the good question, you run the risk of having measurement bias. If you go and take population that is poor, that cannot remember what you're asking them about 5 years ago, then you have record bias causing problem in your findings. Then I've already talked about the confounders. So whenever you're going to start your research question and having a design, always think of how you randomize to take care of selection bias, blind your people so that they don't come and give you questions or responses because they expect you. They want to make you happy. Therefore, they give you responses that you should expect from them. Always have very clear inclusion and exclusion criteria in the selection of your participants in any study. And in the end, you'll be able to adjust scientifically using your statistics to take care of any confounders as the case may be. One point that we should also note in getting our question is that don't take human beings, don't take partners, don't take patients as just people that have used studies, as just frequency, male 20, female 90. Don't take participants like that. Think of the respect that you have for your participant. Inform them, let them know about your work very well, and let them now give you consent that is from a place of knowledge. Let it be that you don't coerce people into participating in your research, so they should be able to know that their confidentiality is assured throughout the process. Let it benefit them and minimize as much harm as possible, even if it is a novel drug. Always ensure that you select people fairly and justly into any group of research that you are conducting. And finally, always get ethical approval before you conduct any study. We try to give an example of a poorly framed research question here, and its counterpart, a very good one. A very poor question would be vague, so it does not specify who these students are and what is their population. It does not specify, for instance, in this our study, do students like the Pavilion ring? What is like? Like can be anything. Like can be the money. Like can be the color. Like can be anything about it. If you say that students preference, students of where? These students of primary school, secondary school, of universities, who are these students? And so it is difficult for you to use this research question. But see the other right-hand side of the screen, where we talk about the good and strong research question. You see that it has population is specific. You see that it has clear intervention that's given. It's clear about its measures that it wants to bring up, and it is about a given time point. This one is testable, and this one can withstand any scrutiny. When you are done setting your research question, and I'm just about to conclude, I advise that you should try and check for some of these things that we're asking. Are you able to ask your research question in a sentence and it is reasonable to you and to a listener? If you write it down in a paper and give to someone, can that person understand it without asking you questions to interpret it for him? If you give to two different people, can they come up with the same interpretation of your question? Then that question is good. Have you used any existing framework, the most commonly used ones, PICO for instance, to answer that you have a population, there's an intervention, there's a comparison, it's time bound? What is the objective? What is the aim? What are the hypotheses that you have formed from this question? At the end, if you're going to now give a conclusion, will your conclusion answer your research question? That is why some authorities say that a good conclusion of any study, either as a project, master's, PhD, or even a write-up, is that for every specific objective, there should be a statement of conclusion of that statement. Whenever you have specific objective, 5 objectives, then you should have at least 5 conclusive statements that talk about your objective and how ethical is your question. This is important. If it passes through our issue of final, remember I mentioned that it's almost like the bedrock of every research question. How feasible is it? What is the thing that you're going to measure in it? How novel is it? Is it relevant? These are things that come up whenever you have your research question. Think whether your research question has terms that can be defined operationally. Don't just come and use the word like, which is not measurable. If you say knowledge, perception, if you mention adverse effect, if you mention AEFI, adverse effects following immunization, these are things that are measurable, the operational terms that can be used. And from your question, can you be able to bring up your question, your design of a study? That's important. What are the confounders that you expect to have in your study, and how will you be able to take care of them statistically, or even using your recruitment approach to take care of it? So in conclusion, I want to advise us that whenever we set up our research question, let's think of these 5 key takeaways. Number 1, note that your research question is the bedrock and most important aspect of your research cycle, from idea until a publication, or until better health outcomes are achieved by your patients. Always ensure that it is strong and will not lead to any future problems as you go on, because it is the research question that serves to give the strength and even weaknesses of other things, like your design, like your instruments, your tools, like your outcomes and conclusions, are all determined by the knowledge, by the question. Always have a gap. Remember, we have given some gaps where you can fill in knowledge, fill in method, fill in evidence. Let your research question follow a very good and existing framework. It makes life easy for you to always have a framework that you use in determining reporting your question. Then your method now can now follow your very well written research question, and in the end put people first and build validity right from the word go in your work. So I'll stop here. I understand that majority of our listeners or participants are early career mentees in the CPAN program. Therefore, what we just need to do is, perhaps if we have some questions that can elicit some questions, some responses for us to discuss further, I'm happy to provide such. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Isa. I want to just appreciate you on behalf of the Mentorship Steering Committee. Sorry, Faminas that was coordinating was thrown out of the meeting, and she has been finding it difficult to rejoin. We are so grateful. I believe the mentees most especially are grateful, and we are thankful for always being ready and available to reach out to the mentees. So just like the speaker has noted, we want to open room for questions, most especially from the mentees and then from every other participant. So if you are willing to ask, you can just indicate, and I will just notify the sequence of the questions. Otherwise, if you would want to ask on the chat, you can also send in the question through the chat box. So we make open the room for questions, please. So kindly raise.
Oh. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening.
Yes, all right. Thank you very much. Sincere apologies for not raising my hand since I didn't get that instruction earlier. So I'm pharmacist Ibrahim Mohammed Amidu. I'm a consultant pharmacist and the head of pharmacy at Defense Headquarters Medical Center in Abuja. I want to thank the presenter, my mentor, my elder brother, for a very insightful presentation that has indeed actually broadened my knowledge in certain aspects. So my question is, now, for some of us who practice in the clinical setting. And sometimes sample size is actually a very important factor in either ascertaining whether a study is actually conclusive or can be generalized or otherwise. So my question is with regards to, for instance, if I have a burning concern and I can only get, say, a sample of just 5 persons to evaluate my study, probably maybe within these 5 persons, I have a result. Would that be okay to conclude? Like when we have a case, for instance, maybe somebody had an adverse reaction, one person had a severe adverse reaction. I don't know. In terms of clinical significance, how would you respond to that? Will it be convincing enough to say that it's actually a serious thing, or of course it will still be insignificant in terms of concluding on that particular scenario or study? I don't know if my question is actually very clear. Thank you, sir.
It's very clear. Thank you very much, Pharmacist Ibrahim. And that is the advantage of being in the clinic, where you see things firsthand. And whenever we mention, and in fact, you almost give an answer when you say that clinical significance. Remember, I tell people sometimes that you don't use only statistics to tell us how important a finding is. Beside every statistics is a human being, is a patient. Beside every finding is a human being. So even if we find out at the end that there's no relationship between A and B, somebody died, somebody had maculopapular rash, for instance, somebody has Stevens-Johnson syndrome, for instance. So instead of thinking of it as a work that talks about 20, 30, 40, 340 people, as we get from our sample size calculators, convert it into a case study, even if it's just a person. If you now have one case study, two case studies, three case studies, convert them into a case series. You have your question, for instance, you observe that patient A came to your clinic, your patient was taking a given brand of omeprazole, for instance, and that person had his own, what he had was cough. You filled the yellow form for that person and you reported it. The next person comes and have another complication different from that first one. They are different. They are the same drugs of the same brand, but different reactions. Report them independently, alone. Let it be a case study. Send it out. Let it not remain in the repository of NAFDAC. I had a friend, he's in Canada now. When he was serving, doing his internship in NAFDAC, we see that we have a lot of data that's we just wallowing in Abuja. And he went to all the area councils and we just asked 1 or 2 questions and got up the capacity of reporting of adverse drug reactions in FCT. Just in Abuja, how many area councils do you have in Abuja? We don't have 20, 30. And in each area council, we just interviewed just one person. So you can imagine number of area councils, one person each, and we have our finding, and it's published and it's being cited, and people are coming up to talk about follow up to it. So think of it as a case. Think of it as a clinical issue. Think of it as life, as health outcome, not about population, not about people. If we now have your own report, and we have another person's report tomorrow, and the third person's report the next day, then policymakers, stakeholders can come together and decide based on this view. So please don't underrate your small sample size unquote, because you can also design your work to go into that population. Then one other thing that you should remember also, beyond this 1+1+1 types of studies, you can also design works that talk about people's in-depth experiences. So once you have 10, 15, 20 people, you sit them down, ask them individually or as a group, that's enough to give you a good research question that can be used in contributing to the body of knowledge in that particular area. I hope I'm able to give some insight into your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This is actually clear and very helpful. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Isa, and thank you, Flight Lieutenant Ibrahim, for that question. So please, can we have others that have questions? Let's just see you give a raise of hand, or if you would prefer to send it on the chat box, please. so that the presenter can take all at once and then respond to it. Okay, so Dr. Isa, I guess we don't have anything more from this, but maybe on a different note, maybe let me ask you, you'd observe that sometimes, especially those in the clinical settings, we end up gathering data, and then at the point of maybe analysis and other things, you discover that there were some data you were supposed to take and you had not taken it. Maybe owing to the fact that the questions that were to precede the data collection was not clearly stated out. Maybe can you just highlight how do we meander such events, and how can an early career person go over such? Thank you. Maybe that's just on a light note for us as we wrap up the webinar.
Okay, there's a hand up, but maybe before that, let me just respond to this that I just said. Yes, if it happens, it depends on the, let me say, magnitude of what you have missed. By God's grace, I will be in Abuja from Monday to Thursday, where we'll be working on a data set in a workshop. Do you know that as we're going through the data set to conclude and make statements about the about vaccine vaccine economics in Nigeria, we observe that we're missing some very vital data because we want to talk about meningitis. And Nigeria is now moving from what we know as our normal MEN A to MEN 5CV. MEN 5CV was not in any of our study states. We were in Delta, in Bayelsa, in Enugu, in Kano, in Nasarawa, and Adamawa. So I've called someone that's in Adamawa that, please, we need your data. Can you help us with the data when you are coming on Monday to Abuja so that we can see if we can use it to do what we want to do? So if it is profound, if it is something that affects the very fabric of your research, then you have to go back and get the data. But if it is a minor one, not a major one, then you can see how you can go about it. Or in the worst case scenario, you may have to change your research question completely to fit into the current data that you have. Anyone works well, but it depends on what you're using it for. If, for instance, you are a student, graduate student who is pursuing a degree, and after 3 or 4 years in the lab, 3 or 4 years on the field, you see that, oh, I got the wrong questions. I got the wrong data. And so you can't do the analysis again. Your analysis is not giving you what you want to get. That's bad. So yes, it is okay, it happens that people mix up some data as they are collecting. But if it is too much, you may have to go back to the field to start afresh. That is why there should always be checks at every point. We always advise that pre-test and pilot every protocol and every data collection tool. Before you have your final answer, before you have your conclusion, always ensure that you have gone to the field, a small section of where you are going to collect small data, come back home, analyze. Does it answer your question on that small scale, on that little scale, before you move to the wider one that you have spent money, spent time, spent people's resources, and you come up and say that you're not able to answer the question? I hope that answers your concern. So our group captain's hand was up earlier, so I don't know if you still have the question that you wanted to ask.
Thank you very much, Dr. Isa, and good evening, everyone. Mine is not actually a question. I just want to use this opportunity to commend Dr. Isa for the wonderful presentation. I'm sure everybody has learned one or two things. I've actually learned some things and brought a lot of reminders, and I'm happy that some of our mentees are on this call too. So it's a good one. I want to commend you for this presentation, and I want to say we have learned something, and I'm happy I attended this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you, Group Captain Falami. Thank you, Dr. Isa, and thank you, everyone for making it to the webinar. Thank you for the responses to the questions. Earlier, Dr.
Petrus,
Maureen,
there's a hand. There's a hand up. I don't know if it's new or old.
that's the flight lieutenant that spoke earlier. That's if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. I have one other
Okay.
comments to make,
Okay,
sir.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much again for the opportunity. So, sir, my comment I will conclude is a request and a prayer. And because I practice in the clinical setting, and I know for a fact that research is one way we can actually fortify our work, especially because evidence-based medicine is now a mainstay when it comes to clinical practice. However, sir, our culture towards research in the clinical setting is, in fact, if you ask me again, I would say is barely 10 to 20%. So my prayer and request is, I think there's a need for a structured training tailored for those in the clinical setting. Something that will be very deliberate and intentional so that we can build that culture in our practice. Personally, for me, I see that there are a lot of ideas that are burning in my head, but I'm not translating these ideas into reality. And it's not because probably maybe I don't have the knowledge, the skill set, but because of the culture and right from when we are from our training to practice, it's only in recent times now that we are beginning to understand the importance of research. So my request is that there's a need for a structured and a more deliberate and intentional training for pharmacists in the clinical setting over a period of time so we can build this culture in our practice and also appreciate what this would bring for us in the long term. Thank you very much, sir. That will be all from my side, sir.
Okay, thank you, Flight Lieutenant. That's very appreciated. And I believe Dr. Isa and the chairperson of the Clinical Pharmacists Association of Nigeria have listened to this plea. I so much agree with you on that. You even said 10%. Some places is far, far less than that. So I would maybe give the room to the chairperson of the CPAN to just make some few comments as we just draw the curtains to a close and maybe also respond to your plea this evening. Yes, Ma, can you have the floor?
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy listening to this wonderful presentation by our able CPAN National Secretary. Though I'm not surprised, that's what he knows how to do very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Issa, my dear Prof. I want to start by also thanking our dear mentorship coordinator, heavily led by Van Beatrice. You are doing a wonderful work. God bless you. God bless you so much. Up and doing every minute you're on the platform, saying one thing or the other because of our meeting. God bless you. More grace to your elbows. I want to encourage all the mentees to keep up. You never regret it. It's good that you start early to understand what clinical pharmacy is all about. So before you reach this to come, you must have gone a mile with acquired knowledge and expertise. So don't relent. Be serious. Take this mentorship program very serious because it will help you in your career as a pharmacist. So for me, I say thank you everyone that joined us tonight. I've learned a lot. Though Professor Issa is my lecturer, so he has been teaching me. So, but at least I got one or two things tonight. So, thank you so much as we continue to mentor our younger pharmacists. You're welcome. Enjoy your night's rest.
You, Ma, thank you for the comments. Thank you for the responses. I believe that we've had a valuable time that has been given to this webinar and learned what is needed. So the evidence of learning is a change of maybe attitude and a focus on beginning to apply the things that we've learned. So by and large, thank you so much for attending. So every other person is allowed to go back home, if I might use that phrase, but our mentees are to kindly wait back for a brief word of, will I say, charge for us as we move. So, but that's just the information for us this evening. So mentees can kindly stay back. Those that are not in the mentorship program are free to leave. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, and God bless you all. Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night, sir. Dr. Isa, please, if you're in Abuja, do let me know, sir. Thank you, sir.
So good evening, everyone. Good evening, mentees. We initially scheduled the presentations to take place before the webinar. As you can see, it's approaching 10. I must say that having those presentations now will not take place. Sorry for that. Please, it was very, very disappointing that we have been making these announcements for every group to make it and to send the representatives, and yet no one showed up. So we'll just take up the discussions on the different platforms. Just do well to note that there is a follow-up to this presentation. Part of our schedules of work was for you to come up with a research work, basically. So for those that have been a part of the presentation this night, that will be helpful for you, as on the platform you would find next directives on what to do about this presentation. So an evidence that you participated will be a response to what will be asked of us. Please, I want to charge us it will not be good after all you have put through this series for you to end it up just like any other person. You can see that we're having external beneficiaries to the program who will not definitely be certified. Yes, they will learn out of it, but an evidence of what you would have gone through all of this is that you get the certification. And I stressed it at the beginning of the program that last time we had just 10% certified, and I told you that the bar is raised this time around, and yet many people are always putting in one complaint or the other. As I've observed on the different groups, you're writing exams and all of those things, and the way we've structured this does not have back-to-back demands on you. So it's just all about having discipline and all about committing yourself to wanting to get the best out of this. One evidence is that we try to put these meetings, that's when it has to do with the webinars, within the weekends. So please, I want to encourage you. The way we are going, it doesn't look like we're going to have a lot of people certified. I must be frank with you, and we cannot change that bar just because we want to certify people. So please, I will encourage you to do well to respond to the things that are expected of you moving forward. So please, I would like to give room for any comments or any questions or any difficulties that any persons are having within the few minutes left. So is there anyone with anything to say? Kindly just indicate with a raise of hand, and then I would give you the opportunity. Yes, Dr. Timmy Pray is raising her hand. So I will ask her to go ahead, and then others can follow suit. Yes, ma, the floor is open to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Pharmacist Beatrice. Thank you so much for all you're doing. And I really want to appreciate you. Honestly, you are really doing a good job. I can really align with what you are saying, because I can see that even in group 2, where we have the mentees that are not even up to, they are just 8 in number. seven in number, I discovered that there are a lot of excuses, even sometimes when we buy our time. Pharmacy school, we understand, is very busy. Even as a pharmacist, it is even worse. It is even worse. Some of us are in the hospital setting, we're also in the academic setting, but we still buy our time, no matter how hard it is. Now, I understand that your programs have been put most times for evenings so that there are no excuses of lecture, practicals, exams. But you find out that that is the same thing we keep hearing from, mentees. Each time you ask questions, why are you not online? Why are you not responding? And like what I always tell them, sometimes I have to private chat them, go around and talk with them so that before they will not respond. It's not good. Because already, CPAN is it has always been online program from the beginning, since inception. The only time we met is when we do maybe during PSN conference, or maybe when we had our conference, then we do meet and greet to see each other. For the first time, most of us met each other in 20, was it 2021 when we had our conference. After we have started CPAN right from 2019. We didn't know each other until we had that conference before we met each other physically. So it is strictly virtual. So I don't know how you join a program like this and then you don't come online. It's funny because those are the excuses we get to hear after the 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, for going to 1 week. Then you begin to private chat, say, sorry, ma, I'm not online. I don't understand. So I want to support you, our CPAN mentorship, coordinator. I want to support you. Some persons will not be certified. Yes, that's how it should be. Because you don't come to joke with things like this. You come up, you say you want to learn something, and people are buying out time for you, and you are nowhere to be found. It's not fair. So I want to charge you people to be up and doing. Come out and be serious. My specialty, group 2, cardiology and critical care. We've even had some people have asked questions. Are you thinking this? We said, tell us anything. Ask questions on the platform. We're going to reply. Most of you don't want to ask. So please, I'm in support. It's very obvious that so many persons will not be certified. But again, you must have learned something. And if you really want to be, then you should be serious so that people that are teaching you will not be discouraged. That's just the truth. So thank you so much. So that's my own comment. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Ma. We're really grateful for your time. That's the same thing I was telling them. Not just to make the mentees know there are different levels of supervision in this mentorship program. You will see that there are steering committee members. If I've had cause to remove steering committee members from this program, you know that there is no sparing for a mentee. And sincerely, I take those criteria very, very serious. Some of you would have observed that a lot of people that joined this cohort have been removed from the platform. It's part of our simple way of removing people that are not serious. And this cohort had only 50 people admitted. We've removed close to 20 already, and maybe the 30 left are still not showing seriousness. So I know some of the mentors are my witnesses. I've seen everything happening in the different groups. It would not be surprising when at the end of the program we are not able to certify people, but then the bar will have to be kept the way it is. I told the mentees we had moved from the previous cohort, which was much easier than now, and because we really wanted to make it clinically. You can see someone sending a message that they want to send their ward round report, a report that we have extended the days severally just to accommodate people. So thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for the efforts you are putting in your group, and to every other mentor. So mine is just an encouragement for the mentees. I believe that you can do better. I believe that you can put in the best. You can hear my voice. This is not my voice. I'm straining to speak out. because I'm not also too well, but we still create time to give in the best out of this. So if there are no any other comments, we would like to call it a day, and we want to wish everyone the best. We can continue with the discussions at the different specialty platforms, and then we can continue the discussions on the main mentorship cohort group. Thank you so much, and God bless you all. Good night.